Alright, so I am sitting
You
underneath.
can't see it. We had all these covers on this.
Sitting underneath an F4U Corsair, trying to figure out how the main landing gear works. So let's take a look at it here and see if I can figure it out. So, tire, wheel, brakes right here. This looks like a big casting. That's what the wheel is hooked to. It's at kind of a little bit of an angle here, which is interesting. We got the scissors, which keep this lower part from turning, and the chrome part of the oleo, the outer, the part that you normally see of a shock, is going to be right above this, I think. And that could just spin if you didn't have the scissors here. And now up here is the interesting part. So we got hydraulic cylinder that is going to extend and retract the gear. And what it hooks to, well, what it hooks to up there, I think, is just a solid pivot point. No big deal. Down here, it's more interesting. I'd never seen this. So it's going to push and pull on this thing. But what's interesting to me is there's a little arm right here between these two pivot points, between here and here, and this hooks onto that lower pivot. But we've also got this arm that hooks onto this pivot point. We also have a hook right there, so when the gear extends, let's see, we got a lever here and a lever here, and this one can go that way, and this one also goes that way. And you've got a stop right here. So this one comes down like this one comes down along this arc and stops when it bumps into this pin. So basically, if you've got any force at all in this direction, you end up with a straight line here. And what that does is it locks this leg in place. So when this thing retracts, and I'm missing a few points here, these are the high points. When this gear retracts, this arm, which pivots up at that end, this will go that way. This one will go this way, and so this distance will get shorter. And that'll pull this in that direction. So this arm, which will be on a pivot point at that end, will kind of a big version of this. This one will pivot up that way. This one will pivot up that way, since this distance is decreasing. And that, in turn, will decrease this distance, and that'll pull the gear that way. And when these come down this way and hit this stop, and you've got that hook, that'll lock this in place, that'll keep this locked in place, so that'll keep the gear rigid for landing. So when you land, you've got a rearward force on the wheel. If this is locked in place, that absorbs that force. This will be in compression, and that's kept so by this thing staying in place and not collapsing that direction, which is accomplished by that hook. Alright, so this stays stiff, that keeps this stiff, that keeps the gear from collapse or from moving in this direction, which is what it does when it retracts. But it's critical that that not happen when the airplane lands. Alright, those are the high points. I'm guessing that these springs are important. If you have those springs there, that's going to keep this, it's going to pull down on that, which stops against this. So that's good to do what I just described. And like I said, this thing here is interesting. You get a little arm right there, this arm here, and these hooks, which also have a spring on them, which keeps the hook up. So you've got this spring right here, which is going to pull up on this arm and keep these hooks engaged to keep this rigid, which keeps this rigid. All right, so that's what this spring does. And there's only one of them, but as you can see, maybe, these two hooks are connected with this rod. So when that spring pulls up on this side, it's going to pull up on that hook too. So you only need the one spring. So what I need to figure out is when this hydraulic cylinder extends, I need to know how this works, and I don't. So roughly speaking, it's going to push this entire gear leg down, and then this locks in place, that locks in place. But I don't understand exactly what this mechanism is doing. So let's go backwards. Let's figure out what is going to pull this hook out of the way so that the gear can retract. So the hydraulic ram is going to go that way. It's going to pull on this. Alright. So it's going to pull here. When that happens, alright, we've got this tiny little rod, which is, well, all right, I'm gonna go with this. The rod, the hydraulic piston is gonna pull here. When that happens, the fact that this rod is hooked to this little tab that comes down here is going to pull this direction, and that hook will come down. That will allow, as the gear begins to come up, that will allow this to move that way, and then this to move that way. So I think that's got to be it. The ram pulls here in this direction. This rod creates a little tension in this direction, which swivels this hook down. This is going to come down like this. That hook's out of the way. This goes that way. This goes that way. So, I'm still, let's see, so Yeah, I guess it would just be the opposite. The hydraulic's going to push this way, it'll push the gear leg down. But it seems like that's just a connection that's a little difficult for me to grasp. That the hydraulic ram that extends this entire gear leg is just hooked on to this little weirdness. That's a little strange to me. All right, I'm gonna go with that for the time being. Let's consider another aspect to this landing gear. And this is interesting. All right. So, we've got this, which is machined or cast into the leading edge of the wing. And we've got this piece, and there's a Zerk fitting right here, so that, see, I think that confirms that this piece can rotate this way. This piece right here can rotate in this hole, and you can see a pin here and a Zerk fitting here, so this gear leg obviously can go up and down here. Of course, this gear leg doesn't pivot in the position it's in now, or it would swing over and hit the right side of the landing gear opening. But what happens is all these mechanisms I've been looking at pull the gear leg straight back, and as it gets pulled backward, this would pivot counterclockwise as the gear leg pivots this direction here, and this will spin that direction, and that rotates the wheel so that the wheel lies flat in the lower part of the wing. What that means is that this piece of steel, it's probably steel, has to be connected to this lower part of the landing gear, because it has to turn the wheel. I think it's like 89 degrees. So that this wheel will rotate that direction so that this face of the wheel, you'd be able to see it from down here before the gear. Oh, no, that's wrong. That face would be upward, and at the top of the landing gear bay here, and I should have known that. And the gear leg right here actually fits into this space. Now the spar in this wing doesn't simply curve down like the wing shape is. It comes down from the fuselage, then it has this upward curve, and that's to make space for the landing gear leg. But the wheel right here spins this way and up into this space here, while that leg will be on the bottom part of that entire assembly, fitting into this gap right here. So if we look at that mechanism, I'm just trying to visualize how that would work. So actually, yeah, so I was wrong about that. So that would have to spin clockwise, not counterclockwise. Yeah, so as this leg comes back, this thing is going to have to spin clockwise. It's actually a little hard to visualize. But that, is that right? Yeah, the wheel is gonna, this wheel's gonna have to come like this. Yeah, you know, I think the way I said it originally is correct. It's just a little hard to visualize that mechanism. So anyway, what that means is that you've got this inner part of the gear leg, and that comes down here, and the wheel, and this, and the scissors, and this piece, and it's gotta be up to here. That all spins together. This piece is an outer piece. It's hooked to these arms, and I guess that's the main thing. So these arms would prevent this inner piece from spinning, and it will just come up and from here up to the mounting point at the top, and then from here and everything below it, this, the scissors, this, the inner oleo part, and the wheel would all spin together because of the force imparted by that mechanism up at the top. All right, I think that is the gist of it. That's the F4U Corsair landing gear, and I think those are the basics.